Good idea.
Okay, it's recording. All right, guys. So
There we go. Go back.
hey,
Go back
guys.
slide. Or are we? I don't know. Whatever you guys want to do.
So hey, guys. So all right, guys. So here today is the second discussion of BigTh AI. We're excited you guys came, and today we're going to be discussing about military AI. Let's get started. So over the years, you've seen AI in pop culture references, most notably in like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, such as like Iron Man, who uses like those like iron suits to basically just like talk to a computer and basically does most of the stuff for him. Even guys like War Machine kind of do something similar, and even like Age of Ultron, he basically is just an AI robot itself controlling robots. And one thing to note here is that it's basically two opposite sides of a spectrum. Like one side, a human is controlling AI, and then in which is like Tony Stark of Iron Man, and the other one is like Ultron, who's like a literal robot controlling AI. And so like it basically comes down to like whether or not whether it should be human controlling AI or a robot controlling AI. And we'll get get into it a little later, but for now, let's learn about the real life applications of it. So one notable thing that we obviously said, the topic would be military drones. It is always long in today's world, we've always tried to like use AI and improve the lives of both its military veterans and the art of war. It's always long been debated whether or not we should go full autonomous or just at least have some control over the AI drones. Some say it's like it's easier to just control them as it gives us a personal ease, or just have them autonomous as it's like efficient. It's probably going to be more efficient in a way. And here's just some examples of such. Like here, a person's making a drone that's like full, like kind of like AI and gets human controlled. Others here, you can see certain examples of like a tank, automatic tanks, UAV drones, tactical suits, stuff like that. They're all being applied to the real world of AI, the military. So on to the next slide. Oh, and here, sorry. So this article links, so this link here, you can read it. It kind of like goes more in depth about the future tech and whether or not we should like go forward with it. So, and like about the whole like conscious idea of like whether humanity or robots should control the AI that we're trying to possess. So some examples of AI could be like the AI in the missiles, such that like a missile that can, with the use of AI, can effectively pursue its targets. So like that would be pretty useful in that, and instead of like just launching a missile randomly and hoping it'll hit something, you can use, with the power of AI, you can like effectively control a missile in that it will effectively pursue its target until it hits it. So for example, obviously it has like the certain key features of like a regular missile, but with cameras that allow it to detect, allowed to see its target and what it's supposed to hurt, and like basically to detect and see. And then here's an artificial intelligence and a warhead used to like basically program the missile to do just that, to just basically pursue basically their enemy and what it's supposed to like target. Over the years, like we've only used like big missiles that have just like seemingly just hit anywhere and then just accidentally kill like civilians. And I think like the military is just trying to prevent all that by like trying to apply AI to like limit the casualty rate that's like that we see in like today's world, and we want to like make that less in the future.
So to go on to another aspect of the, another facet of this problem, here, if we can go back into the presentation, actually, What do you have to?
Nothing.
Yeah, let's just keep going with this. So I thought another interesting case study that we can really delve into this with is the lethal autonomous weapon system, or it's called a laws system. So these are weapons that have the capability of targeting and firing at specific targets automatically without any user input at all. These have the capability of doing such. And the example I found, an interesting example, was the SGR-A1, which is a Korean-made, basically a sentry gun that's being deployed at the demilitarized zone between South Korea and North Korea that was made by Samsung Techwin. So that's a picture of it right there. If let me minimize so I can see it. It's got cameras, it's got the machine gun there, and it's on its own little turret. So it can target and fire without any user input. It has the capability of doing such. Next slide. So the question then becomes, how do we ensure that this AI is going to make the right decision, that it's going to shoot the right person and not shoot this person who's on our side, or who isn't on any side at all as a civilian? So this DoD directive that I've included is basically the authority on that subject that I found in US doctrine. It is the clauses to allow commanders and operators to exercise appropriate levels of human judgment over the use of force. And I have not been able to find a more conclusive statement than that. And that's what we're going to be talking about. So, okay, yep. So when we talk about a spectrum, we're talking about human controlled, like Iron Man. Tony Stark is in the suit, physically firing all his weapons, versus an autonomous AI, like Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger, or in this case, what do they call him? I can't remember what they call him in the movie, but
T-83.
No, that's the calculator. T-800 is what the name.
Of course. My bad.
I'm sorry, that was amazing. I'm glad we have that on recording. I'm so sorry. But anyway, there's a lot of gray area between human-controlled and autonomous AI, and there's a huge spectrum between only humans and only AI controlling the instrument. So the question is, what's in the middle? What do we have that combines both human-controlled and AI? And so that's where we get into human in the loop versus human on the loop. And I know there's a lot of text on one page, but let me run through it with you. So human in the loop basically means that it requires a user input to actually perform the task. So before it fires, before the SGR-A1 fires, a human has to approve the gun firing. It'll say, okay, we found a target, fire, yes, no. It'll say, yes, confirm, yes. With human on the loop, it does not require human input, but it requires humans to intervene. So it'll automatically just start firing, and then humans can say, no, don't fire, don't fire, don't fire. Or it will initiate the program, and then the human will hit the stop button. So with human in the loop, that's what it currently uses, the SGR-A1. That's what but it has the capability of using human on the loop, which does not require user input. And that's been the huge point of contention. So let me remind you guys of the clause here. Appropriate levels of human judgment over the use of force. That brings us to the question, what is an appropriate level of human judgment? And I'd like to open the floor to everybody. Let's talk about that.
For the discussion, we're talking about how the spectrum varies from a human-controlled AI program to one that is controlled all by itself without any human or user input. So the question here is, who should be in control of the action? Should it primarily be the humans, or should it primarily be the program which is automated to do exactly this purpose? We've got, would anyone want to give a shot? Zach, Luke, Rohit?
It's really hard to say that, because people, especially when there's like a cultural upbringing type context, right? And when it comes to like physical force, appropriate level of human judgment can mean very different things to very different people. For me personally, like appropriate means zero, physical force, but that isn't always practical, especially in warfare. Like, so it's very contextual, which is why I don't think an AI should be completely left to decide on its own what's best in terms of physical action or violence. That's what I would lean towards.
I mean, that's definitely a viewpoint that many of us would consider, because the chances are when we think of anything that is new and really advanced, we tend to fear the worst, because we fear things that we don't understand. And AI is something whose consequences we don't yet fully embrace. That's when we think about it, we always think to the extremes. We think Terminator type of actions instead of more, Jarvis type actions, because it is within us to, fear things that are beyond our powers and beyond our understanding. Well, that's definitely an argument. I would like to spin this in a different way, actually. Now, where would you approve of the application of AI and completely take out humans out of the equation? So I was thinking about, let's say, foot soldiers. Now, naturally, none of us want any soldiers to die on the battlefield, right? So how about replacing soldiers with an army of robots in that regard, which controlled by AI? Because in that, what that achieves is it achieves zero human casualties on your end, because you're completely taking humans out of the equation. And on the other hand, let's say it's a missile defense program like the one that was discussed previously, wherein if you don't have a human element, you won't be able to judge like what is right to you. I mean, certain decisions might seem strategic, but it may completely lack the human element. So over there, you would want a human to be there to judge the human level element, which the AI algorithms won't be able to interpret, because for obvious reasons, it's not a human to understand the human element. Now, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think there are certain places where AI can be used on its own and certain places where it should be used along with the human element or the human input? I would like Zach or Luke to, share their views on this.
I think replacing just the generic army with AI is probably going to end up being a bad idea, because if you let the AI make its own strategic decisions without the human input, the AI doesn't factor in human sentiments like we do, and it may very well choose a very self-sacrificial or a very morally controversial idea that may achieve the best results, but it either requires too big a price or involves parties that like civilians. So in this case, I think it may be it would be better to have AI running the technology, but with a human strategy.
If I may, sorry.
Right, carry on.
No, I just want to say, if I may, what's the point of foot soldiers if they aren't human? Isn't the point of foot soldiers to inflict maximum casualty in efforts to make the other side stand down? That's the whole point of war, is it not? That's why we use bigger and bigger guns, bigger and bigger bombs. So if we don't have human foot soldiers, what prevents us from just solely using nuclear weapons or like intercontinental ballistic missiles to keep the peace?
Well, if it's an issue that if it's not a war of annihilation, let's say it's like a war of suppression where you want to take land where you want to control land that someone else has, you can't just nuke it, because that destroys everything. You have nothing left.
That's true.
And you still need people. And if you're going on that kind, like the war on terror, you want to leave these cities intact with the civilians intact, but you want to keep the terrorists out. So you need people on the ground to secure your position and secure the locations that you're attacking.
And why not use drones hovering above it, for example?
I think
like human controlled drones,
or eventually
autonomous
maybe
drones,
something of that sort. Just I'd like to introduce the idea to the floor. What's the need for foot soldiers if we can do better? The concept of a foot soldier dates all the way back to ancient times. Why do we need this?
I guess one way of spinning this around is, with the way our technology is changing, our nature of war is also changing. So the thought of having foot soldiers out there making decisions to safeguard the better interests of the country at the peril of their own life can now be eliminated, because you're now evolving your war and the nature of your technology to an extent where you can completely take out the humans out of the equation. Now, why would you want to take the humans out of the equation? It's because why risk human lives when you could have an algorithm that runs a robot which could do an equally good job, if not a better job? But
Wait, if
along
you're-
with that
oh,
wait, you're saying something?
if you had an AI that was capable of like I don't know, like hacking into a different country's like confidential database and leaking out a bunch of information, like you could probably win a war without even having to fight it.
Right.
Asymmetrical warfare. That's a tactic employed already. Sorry.
Right.
I mean, it is employed already, but only insofar as humans can accomplish it. Like, do you know what I mean?
It definitely makes
I understand
sense.
it. And that's another aspect we have to consider is warfare's changing. How is AI going to help us adapt?
Can I weigh in on this?
Technology progresses over time.
Sure,
Yeah,
go
sure.
ahead.
I think as
Oh, wait,
technology
Tanmay was saying something.
Tanmay?
Yeah, so like as long as technology progresses over time, like eventually the military will probably go full AI eventually. So like then like that's kind of just what we have to consider, like humans or like robots should control, whether or not the humans or robots should control AI. It's actually going back to like the foot soldier thing. We might not even need foot soldiers eventually. We might just replace them all with just robots in general. Or even, like that way, like it won't have to be like a person losing a leg or just like losing his face or whatever. It can just be just a simple robot that just gets destroyed that can easily be replaced.
Almost the
Right.
battle droid from Star Wars, if you understand.
Yeah.
Rohit, you wanted to say something?
Yeah.
So when we're going about weighing the idea of like AI versus foot soldiers, those are both the means to conduct warfare. They're like a medium, right?
Yeah.
But I think maybe the answer might lie in the condition on which wars end, right? What does it take for the war to end? Is it just like a show of massive brute force? Is it human like triggered fear in the enemy? Is it like a certain death toll on innocent civilians when the country says, okay, I'm done with this war, I'm backing out, don't attack me? What condition causes the war to end? And if we have AI running that, if we have just AI killing other AI, it's just a bunch of tech that's just like scrambling itself back into metal, right? So I think the answer probably depends on what people try to gain from the war and with what purpose it's fought and like what the result of it is going to be.
If I may add on to that, that's what I was trying to insinuate when I was talking earlier about the point about not needing foot soldiers was, what is the point of war if there is no human casualty? Wars are decided by people in Oval Offices saying, okay, this is not worth it anymore. We can afford, based on the death toll we have, we can't afford to continue fighting this war whatever we have that they want doesn't justify what it has cost. We run essentially a cost-benefit analysis to determine this isn't necessary based on the loss of human life and based on the amount of financial damages and based on our standing in the world at this point. So it's a conglomerate of factors that is oftentimes decided by a human. I'm sorry, I'm about to finish my point. So, yeah.
Right. Tanmay, Siddarth, you brought up a very good point about cost-benefit analysis, which enables the heads to decide whether a war is worth fighting or not. I'd actually like to take this along a different direction. So most of you know what Cold War is and how Cold War brought about this concept of MAD, which is mutually assured destruction. Now, a lot of us would know that as one of the fundamental grounds as to which there was, a very uneasy peace that was created between the USA and the USSR, because they felt that if one of them would start an aggression, then both parties would be equally damaged, and it would cause damage on a catastrophic level. Now, when you introduce the powerful element of AI-controlled algorithms that can, initiate wars on a completely different level, does it bring about the threat between countries that, okay, if I do something wrong, then we know that the other country or the aggressor has got an equally capable AI algorithm or an AI military defense system that can attack us. So can we also say that the introduction of AI in some way can bring about peace? Because now you're thinking, okay, if I use my, advanced defense capabilities, they too can use it on us, and it could cause mutually assured destruction. So in a way, AI can, the show of strength of AI can also bring about peace, though uneasy, but it would still be able to affect peace. So what are your views on that? I would like to ask Zach. Zach, are you comfortable with answering the question?
Sure. Do you mind repeating it a little bit?
So I was saying that, like how during the Cold War, there was a cold peace, a very uneasy peace that was brought about between the US and USSR on the simple premise that both of them had enough nuclear arsenal to destroy one another. So now you take out the nuclear aspect out of it and introduce the AI capabilities into the equation. So do you think that would still stand, that, with the introduction of AI, the nature of war would be so brutal and catastrophic that people would not want to engage in it in the first place to avoid major damages?
That's a good question. The threat of, like, my thought process is like, what threat would AI bring that nuclear warfare would not? And back then, if we're talking like the resources they had back then, I think it's kind of, I don't know, at least now looking back, I'm not sure like which ways AI could disrupt like a population, whether it be like through biowarfare or any other method. I'm not sure how much AI could really.
I could help you out there.
Sorry. I wanted to interject actually, because there's an anecdote that I wanted to share about this exact scenario, and that is the anecdote of the Russian nuclear weapons officer that single-handedly prevented mutually assured destruction when his advanced early warning system, his AEW, predicted saw nuclear weapons coming towards the USSR, coming towards Moscow. And instead of approving firing back, turning the key, he said, nah, probably a flock of birds. Guess what it was? A flock of birds. So I think that's part of what we need. That's part of what, I think that's just something to contextualize, something to think about here is human interaction a good thing or is it a bad thing? And how is AI going to change that? Sorry, I just thought I'd interject with that. But continue with your point, Zach.
Yeah, that's a good point. I totally forgot about like missile intervention. I think having a human in the loop system is great for cases like that. And maybe some out of the loop systems for like demilitarized zones where missiles might be incoming and you might not have time to react. If you see like a definite missile, you can shoot at it and not worry about having casualties. And so I think that would be fine. That would perhaps.
Okay, so
yeah.
If I might interpret your point a little bit. So you're saying for like a dead system where it shoots for shooting missiles out of the sky for defense, for prevention.
Yeah.
You have an on the loop system where it activates without human intervention, and so that can limit casualties unless specifically unless specifically told not to fire if there's a plane flying through the area or something like that. Otherwise, it shoots it down, whatever it is. And
Yeah.
it's a bird. I mean, that's not super important.
Yeah.
It's a bird. But if it's a missile, we shot down a missile. Great job, everybody. And we know what happened. But if it's something where there's going to be actual human casualties if we fire back, then we sort of draw the line at, is there going to be human casualties, is I think what you're getting at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
I just checked the time, it's 5:01. So, I mean, at the end of the discussion, we've realized that, the introduction of AI into the military sphere has got a lot of effects, both on, changing the nature of war and changing the nature of peace also actually altogether. Because now you're talking about a powerful entity that can, tip the scales of whether you want to go to war or not, or whether you want to initiate an action or not, because it's taken the scale of war to an entirely different level. So I think at the end of it all, when we discuss this question, what is appropriate level of human judgment? It is one, we unilaterally, most of us agree that we definitely need some kind of human interaction in the system, because I mean, how much ever we advance the capabilities of AI algorithms that can control missile defense systems, there's always that human element which you cannot really program into an AI algorithm. Or even if you can, it's kind of like that singularity that you'll never really reach, or even if you'll reach it, it'll probably be like a long time away. So at the end of it, we must marvel at the AI and its influence in the sphere of defense and military, but we must also view this with a certain level of caution, because we're treading into uncharted waters. I mean, we do have the Cold War as a reference to what we should choose, but we're talking about a war that's fought on an entirely different scale, level, and understanding. So the takeaway from this is just have a thought about it. Question like, how is AI influencing it? Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? Where do we draw the lines? Because while this may be about war, we are also seeing the influence of AI in a lot of other fields, and it's changing the way we lead our lives. So, and it's just a takeaway. Think about the ethical benefits of AI and how it plays a role in your life and where to draw the lines. So that was basically the takeaway from this. Hope you all had a nice discussion session. It was a little too overwhelming, maybe, but if it wasn't, then, and if it was really engaging, then would really appreciate it. And I'll be sending you the discussion feedback. So hope whoever was here would fill it so that we get a reflection on what we did well and what we need to improve. So thank you all. Like to say thanks to Siddarth Gupta, because he really was a major factor in this discussion, as well as Tanmay. And thank you all for attending the discussion. Now I pass it over to Rohit.
Today is Shanu's presentation, but that was a great discussion section, you guys. Good stuff, very engaging, and thanks Sid for coming in and